The unveiling. Sandra stepped out of the car, inhaling the crisp scent of the pine trees that surrounded her grandmother's old house. It had been years since she last visited Ravenshade, a town hidden between thick forests and endless fog. The place had always given her an uneasy feeling, but she dismissed it as childhood imagination. Now, at 22, she had returned for the summer, expecting nothing more than quiet days of reading and helping her grandmother. "Sandra, dear, you've grown so much." Her grandmother Rose greeted her warmly at the door. She was a frail woman, her silver hair tied in a neat bun. "Come inside before the night falls. The wind carries whispers after dark." Sandra chuckled nervously. Her grandmother had always been superstitious. "It's just the wind, Grandma." Rose didn't respond. Instead, she guided Sandra inside, locking the door behind them. The house was exactly as she remembered. Old wooden floors, dimly lit hallways, and an antique mirror hanging in the entryway. The mirror had always unsettled Sandra. It was large, its frame covered in intricate carvings of roses and thorny vines. Something about its reflection never felt quite right. That night, after unpacking, Sandra wandered into the attic searching for books to read. Dust swirled in the air as she rummaged through old trunks. That was when she saw it, a small, ornate hand mirror resting on a wooden chest. Its silver frame was cold to the touch, and as she wiped the dust off the glass, a strange shiver ran down her spine. A whisper. Sandra turned sharply. "Grandma!" Silence. Shrugging it off, she took the mirror with her and returned to her room. Lying in bed, she examined it closer. Unlike most mirrors, this one had a slight ripple in the glass, as if it were water frozen in time. Her own reflection seemed off. Her eyes appeared darker, and for a split second, she thought she saw a shadow move behind her. She turned quickly. Nothing. Brushing off her unease, she set the mirror on the nightstand and turned off the light. Sleep came quickly, but brought with it a dream. Sandra stood in the middle of the forest, dressed in a nightgown. The air was thick with mist, and in the distance a figure stood among the trees. A woman, draped in a flowing black veil, her face hidden. "Who are you?" Sandra asked. The woman didn't move, but a whisper drifted through the air. "You found my mirror." A sharp pain shot through Sandra's chest. She gasped, clutching her heart, as the woman lifted a pale hand, pointing directly at her. The darkness around them thickened, and suddenly, Sandra was falling. She awoke with a start, breathless, her skin cold with sweat. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the clock. Trying to shake off the lingering fear, she reached for a glass of water on her nightstand. The mirror was no longer where she had left it. Heart pounding, she searched the bed, then the floor. It was now lying on her dresser, perfectly placed, as if someone had moved it. A knock at the window made her freeze. Slowly, she turned her head. Outside, the forest loomed in the moonlight. The wind rustled the trees, but there was no one there. Yet deep in her gut, she felt something watching her. Sandra barely slept that night. The next morning, she told her grandmother about the dream. Rose's face paled. "You didn't bring anything back from the attic, did you?" Sandra hesitated. "Just a mirror." Rose's hands trembled. "You must take it back, at once." "Why?" Sandra frowned. "It's just a mirror." Rose's eyes darkened. "That mirror belonged to her." Sandra's stomach twisted. "Who?" Rose exhaled shakily. "The Queen of the Night." Sandra scoffed. "That's just a story, Grandma." Rose grabbed her hand. "No, child, it's not. She was real. And if she's calling to you, you're in danger." A cold dread settled over Sandra. The dream, the whispers, the shadow in the mirror, none of it had been her imagination. That night as she lay awake, she made a decision. She had to learn the truth. But some truths should remain buried in the dark. The haunting begins. Sandra woke in the middle of the night, unable to move. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the ceiling. A heavy weight pressed down on her body, making it impossible to breathe. She wanted to scream, but her lips wouldn't part. Then she saw it. A dark figure stood at the foot of her bed. The air around it shimmered, as if the shadows had taken shape. The figure wore a long, tattered veil that concealed its face, but Sandra could feel its eyes piercing through her. Cold, empty, and filled with hunger. The room grew colder. The walls seemed to close in. The figure slowly raised its hand. Sandra's chest tightened. A whisper slithered into her ears, soft and hollow. "You will be mine." Sandra's vision blurred. The weight on her chest lifted, and she gasped for air. She shot up in bed, clutching her sheets, her body drenched in sweat. The room was silent again. The figure was gone, but the fear lingered. She turned on the bedside lamp and glanced at the clock, 3 a.m. Her hands trembled as she hugged herself. It was just sleep paralysis, she told herself, but deep down, she knew better. The next morning, Sandra told her grandmother Rose about the nightmare. Rose's face darkened. She reached for Sandra's hand and squeezed it tightly. "You must be careful, child," she whispered. "The Queen of the Night is watching." Sandra frowned. "What do you mean?" Rose hesitated, then stood up and walked to an old wooden cabinet. She pulled out a leather-bound journal, its edges worn with age. She handed it to Sandra. "This belonged to my grandmother," Rose said. "She wrote about the Queen of the Night." Sandra opened the journal, flipping through the brittle pages. The handwriting was faded but still readable. The words sent a chill down her spine. The Queen of the Night was once a woman, beautiful but cursed. She was betrayed and left to die, but she did not rest. She cursed this town, swearing she would return in another body. Each century, she searches for a vessel. Sandra's breath hitched. "You think she's real?" Rose's eyes, full of fear, locked onto hers. "I know she is." Strange things began to happen around the house. Doors creaked open on their own. Footsteps echoed in the halls when no one was there. The air carried the scent of decayed roses. One evening, Sandra was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water, when the lights flickered. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. A shadow moved in the corner of her eye. She turned sharply. The veiled woman stood at the end of the hallway, motionless. Sandra dropped the glass. It shattered against the floor. She blinked and the woman was gone, but the air remained thick, heavy with unseen presence. Breathing hard, Sandra ran to Rose. "She's here," she gasped. "I saw her." Rose grabbed Sandra's shoulders. "Did she speak to you?" Sandra hesitated, then nodded. She said, "I will be hers." Rose's face turned pale. She whispered something under her breath and rushed to the kitchen. From a drawer, she pulled out a small silver amulet and pressed it into Sandra's palm. "This will protect you," she said. "Never take it off." Sandra clutched the amulet, feeling its cold surface. She wanted to believe it would keep her safe, but deep inside, she knew the Queen of the Night wouldn't stop. She was coming, a town's secret. Sandra had to know the truth. The whispers, the strange visions, and the growing fear in her heart would not let her rest. She decided to go straight to the town's elders, hoping they would have answers. But when she asked them about the legend of the Queen of the Night, they all fell silent. Their faces turned pale, and their eyes darted away, refusing to meet hers. "We do not speak of such things," one of them muttered before walking away. Another elder shook his head, his lips pressing into a thin line. "Forget what you have seen, child. Some secrets are better left buried." Sandra's frustration grew. How could they expect her to ignore something that was haunting her? She felt like she was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Just as she was about to leave, a frail voice called out to her. "Sandra!" the voice rasped. She turned and saw Agnes, the oldest woman in town, watching her with knowing eyes. Unlike the others, she did not look away. She motioned for Sandra to follow her into a small, candlelit room at the back of her house. Once inside, Agnes grabbed Sandra's hands with surprising strength. "The Queen's spirit is restless," she whispered. "She watches. She waits." Sandra shivered. "Who is she?" she asked. "Why is she haunting me?" Agnes sighed, her old eyes filled with sorrow. "Once chosen, there is no escape," she said. "The Queen of the Night marks her own. She takes what she wants." Sandra's heart pounded. "Marks? What do you mean?" Agnes lifted her trembling fingers and pointed at Sandra's wrist. Sandra gasped. A dark symbol like a twisted crown had appeared on her skin. She had not noticed it before, but now it pulsed, as if alive. "The mark means she has claimed you," Agnes said. "She will come for you soon." Sandra stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, this can't be happening." Agnes grabbed her wrist. "Listen to me, child. You must fight. Do not let her in." Sandra's breath hitched. "Let her in!" Before Agnes could answer, a sudden gust of wind blew through the house, extinguishing the candles. The room plunged into darkness, and a chilling voice whispered Sandra's name. She screamed, backing against the wall. Then just as suddenly the wind stopped. Agnes relit a candle, her face pale. "She is watching," she murmured. "She is always watching." Sandra ran home, her mind racing. She burst through the door and found her grandmother, Rose, sitting in her rocking chair. "Grandma," Sandra panted, "something is happening to me." Rose looked up, concern etching deep lines on her face. "Tell me, child." Sandra told her everything, about the dreams, the shadows, the whispers, and what Agnes had said. Rose's face darkened. "I prayed this day would never come," she murmured. Sandra grabbed her hands. "You knew?" Rose nodded slowly. "The Queen's spirit is real, Sandra, and she does not let go of those she claims." Before Sandra could ask more, a loud crash echoed from outside. The front door burst open, and Oliver, her best friend, stumbled in. But something was wrong. His eyes were empty, his face twisted into an eerie grin. "Sandra," he said, but it was not his voice. It was deeper, colder, like something inhuman was speaking through him. Sandra stepped back. "Oliver, what's wrong?" He laughed, a low, guttural sound. "She's here," he whispered. "She's inside me." Rose grabbed Sandra's arm. "Stay back," she warned. Oliver tilted his head, his movements unnatural. "You cannot run," he whispered. "You belong to her now." Sandra screamed as Oliver lunged at her, his fingers clawing at the air. Rose grabbed a handful of salt from a bowl on the table and threw it at him. Oliver shrieked, his body convulsing before he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Sandra's breath came in gasps. "What's happening to him?" Rose pulled Sandra close. "The Queen is trying to break you," she said. "She will use those you love to do it." Tears burned Sandra's eyes. "How do I stop her?" Rose's face was grim. "You can't." A shadow flickered in the corner of the room. A pair of glowing red eyes stared at them from the darkness. A cold voice whispered, "Soon," and then the lights went out.